Thanks, Stephen. It's great to see you. And I know it's thunder and lightning where you are, so we'll see if we get through this without any dramatic weather-based interlude. But for people who don't know you, just say a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephen Wyatt. I'm head of analytics at the strategy unit. I've been working in health and social care most of my career in roles relating to analysis and information.
Excellent. I should out myself as a colleague as well. So if I lob you any difficult questions, people could assume there's some brewing feud between us. I'm trying to catch you during the interview or something. I will. So, but let me start broad and let me start easy. So, I'm really interested in your reflections on the value of analysis and the value of good analysis in health and social care. So, again, just in very broad terms, if you just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I guess we all share the view, don't we, that at some level, decision makers will make better decisions if they're in full possession of the facts. And unfortunately, in the healthcare settings, most situations don't fit that fairly simple paradigm where all that a decision maker needs is one more bit of simple information and the right decision will be made. They take decisions in situations where there's great uncertainty about the factors that we think might be influencing the outcomes that we're interested in. There might be a very diverse range of opinions about the outcomes that might be important to us or to our stakeholders. And we operate in very sort of complex or complicated systems, and trying to work out how changes in an individual factor might influence a particular outcome is quite complicated. And I see that's where the role of an analyst fits in. It's gathering data, deploying their sets of analytical skills to the problem, then trying to interpret the results for the decision maker. That's where I see sort of analysis fitting into the process of improving decision making. It's a much more engaged profession than simply the provision of a piece of data to address a gap in knowledge. And I think there's probably a few trends that have really raised the profile of analysis over the last generation or so, particularly in the public sector. The first is the rise of regulation and the expectations of transparency on public sector decision makers. I think most decision makers now realise that big decisions that they take, there's a good chance there'll be some scrutiny after the event. People asking the questions, what should they have known? What did they know? How do they use that information to make good and effective decisions? And if you take the current situation, I mean, all the people who are working on the COVID epidemic in the sort of political policy world at the moment will be very aware that all their decisions will be scrutinised at some later date through some public inquiry of some sort. So I think the rise of regulation, the expectation of transparency has meant that decision makers have got to rely a bit more on analysis because they need that to back them up in difficult times. And I think there's some sort of cultural change within management as well over the last generation or so. I think if you'd have asked managers what makes them a good decision maker, maybe a generation ago, they would have referred to their experience or their instinct, their gut, trusting their gut to make good decisions. Whereas these days, I think people realise that's probably not a good answer, and the right answer to give is that they're good at assimilating lots of information and interpreting the analysis of others to make sure they make the right decisions. So I think there's that sort of cultural trend within management that's served to raise the profile of analysis. Whether we've done more than simply take on board the concept and really taken that to heart is another matter. But I think those are the two big trends that have served to raise the profile of analysis.
That's really interesting. And neither of those trends could you see abating or going away tomorrow? I mean, imagine the argument for reduced transparency. Imagine the argument for more gung-ho, gut-in. I mean, although, as you say, there is a sense in which you could just absorb the language and not alter the behaviour, I suppose. But the trend you point to, hard to see either of those going away. Give me your assessment then as to sort of how close to realising the source of value that analysis can have are we? So if we have this picture, naive or otherwise, of decision makers taking in analysis alongside the other inputs that you were talking about, and then making better decisions, how close to that are we currently in health and social care?
I think we're in a sort of big transitionary phase at the moment. I think the work of people like Adam Stevenson and Martin Bardsley at the Health Foundation have really served to raise the profile of analysis and analysts within the NHS to show people what the potential is from good analysis, to give analysts more opportunities to learn and develop their trade. That's made a massive difference, and managers have definitely taken that message on board, it feels to me anyway. I have lots of conversations with managers which just give me the sense that people are recognising the potential for the profession much more than they did maybe in the past. But it does feel like a bit of a start. It's a good start, but there's lots to be done to convert that into something that makes a real difference in the long term. And there's a couple of areas where I think we need to make some progress. I'm not sure as yet we've quite nailed how we should organise the analytical profession and the analytical resources that are available to us. I suspect for most analysts, despite the revolution that seems to be going on in front of our eyes, the day-to-day practice of the work they do probably hasn't changed that much. And I can't see that changing, that particular issue changing, until we have a relatively large cohort of senior experienced analysts in the NHS. We need 100 or so across the country of people who, have been doing the job for 20, 25 years. They know the profession and the data sets and the methods, well. Nobody can know it all, but to know a good proportion of it well, and to be willing to devote a part of their time to nurturing and developing and managing, supporting their teams. So I think there's a job to be done in that respect. And I think there's a bit more to do in terms of codifying the profession as well. I'm a bit worried at the moment that we've substituted the instinct of a decision maker for the instinct of an analyst. That really all we've done is pass back the mystical bit of the work that goes to another set of people. And until we do a bit more to really codify the profession, so that we can be confident that two managers sitting in different parts of the system who have got exactly the same decision to make would receive similar sets of guidance from good experienced analysts when they're making their decisions. I don't know whether we can say we've got a profession that's worth much, and I feel that there's still an awful lot to be done to try and get to that stage where we codify the profession enough so that we can be confident we have some consistency across the support that people get. That isn't to say there isn't good analysis going on. There's lots of good analysis going on, but I think one test of whether analysis is working well is that test of consistency across different parts of the system and across different decision makers. I'm not sure we've quite got that right at the moment either.
I'm really interested in your answer within what you were describing, and also reflecting back on some of your take on the work that the Health Foundation in particular have done. It feels like a young profession in the way you were describing it, or quite a young profession, or maybe an adolescent profession. Maybe it's sort of trying to decide what it's going to be when it grows up, and trying to work out which path to take. In doing that, the sort of role of the parent, or the role model, or the leader, or the leadership of that profession seems really important in terms of, defining out an agenda for development, in terms of role modeling things, in terms of nurturing the next generation. I said I was going to chuck a tricky question at you. I'm going to do it by flattery, which I know you hate. So, as someone who is a senior analyst within the system, or someone who is a leader and an analyst, what is it about being an analyst and a leader? What are the attributes you need in order to be a good leader and an analyst? Well, your flattery is going to get you nowhere, because I'm not sure I know the answer to the question, I'm afraid, which must say something. I don't know, I guess
I guess the struggle that I constantly have is the balance between how much do I do because I love the work. I love doing analysis. That's what gets me, that's what energizes me. And how much time do I leave to support others to do the work they need to do? And I really do enjoy that as well. And I kind of feel you need a bit of both throughout your career. I don't think you can afford to do entirely one or the other. I don't think you can lead a group of analysts just by doing good work and leading by example. That's part of it, but I don't think that's the only part of it. And I don't think you could be a good analyst if you gave up doing it yourself as a day job. I think you have to keep in touch with the profession to a certain degree. So I guess finding ways to manage that balance for yourself, but also to find organisations that are prepared to support you in that way, to work with a balance of those two bits of work program, really. I don't know. I'm not sure that's a particularly good and thorough answer to your question, but that's kind of my. I know that's the battle I find I'm faced with all the time. Is how much do I give to each of those two parts of my role, and am I losing out by focusing too heavily on one and not the other?
There's also something that you probably won't observe because it's easier for me to see you do it. You and other analysts do this as well. Is helping people to frame decisions, helping people to think with a certain logic and with a certain mode of thought that requires evidence. That that the different inputs you were talking about earlier on, or analysis would fit here, but actually that's an ethical question, or we need public engagement here, or here are the trades within a decision, and here's how you might think about that. Sort of promoting that way of thinking about the place and helping decision makers to see the choices that they face. I also think that's part of the analyst leader job as well. I don't know if you'd accept that at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's partly goes back to the point I was trying to make about codifying the role. I feel like we should be able to describe that process, a young or aspiring or middle grade analyst should be able to look up somewhere what is it I should be thinking, and what are the tools I should be using to help me understand this problem. And I'm not sure we've done that at the moment. I think we've got a number of tips and tricks that people can pick up so they can see other people doing it, or we can describe some of them. But I'm not sure we've fully codified it enough so that we can get a consistent set of approaches across different analysts. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole set of things around about taking your time, which I think is probably one of the messages we need to give younger analysts as well. I think the problems that are really worth tackling are not going to be solved quickly, and it may be somebody will come up with a really, really novel and quick approach to resolving problems we've been trying to tackle for a long time, but it probably is going to take some deep thought, considerable bit of analysis to really unpick some of these long-standing problems that we want to try and address in the health service, and giving people the freedom to take their time over a problem, but also the support to say, don't just sit and look at things forever. You've got to try and make progress. Got to get into the problem somehow. I think that's probably a role that an analyst leader probably needs to fulfil, to give people the space, but also to give them a sense that, no, okay, you've done enough on thinking on that. Now try and think of it from a different perspective, or try and make progress from another view now, or through a different technique. Yeah.
That's excellent. It also touches, for me, on the sort of question of organizational and institutional structures as well, so that you can have then organizations that create the space that you've described, and universities will be an obvious way of thinking about that kind of thing, and yet are also very applied on important problems and important questions. It's not a trivial challenge, is it? I'd like you then to reflect across everything that we've talked about, and I want to ask you the revolutionary question. What is to be done? So where would you start? What would your agenda be for realizing more value from analytics?
There's one line which I've been making for probably the last 25 years, and I'm going to keep saying it. Which I think there's one thing that organisations could do to make a big difference, and that's to recognise that there are two discrete professions that we're talking about. When we use the term analysis in health service loosely, we really are talking about two increasingly distinct, aligned but increasingly distinct professions. And they both require a distinct skill set, and if done well can make a big difference. But they are different and they require different people with different skills. So the first is people who specialise in the management of information, and their role is to work out how all these complex data sets that we have in the NHS, what they mean, how they're assembled, how they're linked together, and then to try and find ways of curating that data to make it available to other people to see on a regular basis. Information that might be important for tactical and operational decisions that they're making. And we need to recognise that's an important set of people doing that work, and we need to promote that profession. And then there's a set of people who probably are more along the lines of analysts or data scientists, who will work on more discrete, project-oriented, problem-focused projects, and their job is to try and deploy all that data and information to address a very specific problem, and their piece of work will operate over a much longer time frame. And I think the one thing we've done wrong in the NHS for many years is confuse those two different professions, and we expect people to be able to walk across those two professions and deliver products satisfactorily. I think that's very difficult. And also the risk is that when you have these two professions muddled up, it tends to be the management information requirements, which are more immediate and urgent, that take precedence, and nobody ever gets the time to do the more complicated analytical work. And in fact, what we do in that situation is tend to go out to the private sector and get a consultancy in to come and do that piece of work for us. So I think we need to separate those two things. I think we need to resource them separately. I think we need to think about recruiting to them in a distinct way. People can make a movement during their careers between those two roles, but I think we need to be clear which one they're in for most of their career. So that's the one thing I would be recommending. Let's stop trying to deliver analysts through people who have trained in a slightly different professional route. So yeah, that's at least one of the things I try and do, is make sure that every organisation was clear which are its management information staff and which are its analysts.
Do you think the former frames managers' understanding of the latter? Or so the general frame of reference in the system would be the former, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think everybody's got experience of management information, so managers don't need instruction to know what the benefit of good management information systems are. They already get that. But fewer managers will have had a good working relationship with an experienced analyst, where they've seen what that can do to improve their own efficacy. And in fact, one of the things that I'd also try and recommend going forward is that we try and expose more and more managers to a good working relationship with an experienced analyst. Because I think it's only when they see the power of that relationship and what that can do to transform the way they work that they'll start making the case then for analysts to be recruited in their own right, rather than for us to carry on as we are.
That's excellent. And that was, when I was trying to describe earlier, one of the roles of the analytical leader, and trying to get that sort of mindset infused across the system. That was kind of where I was trying to get to with that as well. You know, the manager and the leader who thinks analytically, they're not analysts, you know, they'll never, but who thinks analytically, they approach decisions in a particular way, don't they? And, you know, more power to their elbow, and I wish there were more of them. Are there other things that you would do to advance this agenda? Are there any other recommendations that you would make to improve the use of analysis in the system?
Well, there's probably some research we should, as a system, sponsor to illustrate, like we would anything else in the health service, the benefit of more advanced analytics. I'm sure other people are onto that, but that would make a big difference to be able to refer to some good research evidence to make the case that expanding this profession would bring benefits to patients, not just for ourselves. I think you're right. There's a stepping up that needs to happen. We need analysts to do a few things over the next few years. We need that cohort of analytical leaders. What I really want is to have experienced analysts leading analytical teams, not generalist managers leading analytical teams. I'm convinced that's the way forward. But for that to happen, we need some managers, some experienced analysts to give up some of their time to become, analytical leaders. I think analysts need to kind of step forward a bit more as well. I think there is a risk that we're a little bit tentative and responsive, whereas we probably need analysts to ask themselves the question: what are the big problems facing the organisations I work with? What can I do to resolve them? Am I willing to take responsibility for a programme which might try to transform something and make a difference, rather than wait for a senior manager to come to them and propose that? I think we need to be stepping forward and making those suggestions ourselves. So yeah, there's a bit to be done on our side, I think, to make the change that we're looking for.
I also wonder, I'm trying to get you to speculate again now. I also wonder whether COVID provides a sort of revolutionary moment as well, because we've now got celebrity analysts, as far as I can make out. The press seem to be interested in maybe some aspects of their life as well outside of analysis, but and models, and everyone's an sort of armchair epidemiologist, and everyone wants to know what K is as opposed to R. Do you think this gives us a moment? Do you think there's something about the way that this is playing out, about the way that analysis and modelling has worked within this crisis and decision making, that allows us allows the analysts as a community to point to it and say, that's what it looks like, that's what we do, that's what you need?
Yeah, undoubtedly it's an opportunity. It's a risk as well, of course, if things don't go the way of the models. And I think there's probably a couple of phases we need to go through, aren't there? We need to go through the phase where people get really excited about what analysis can do and what machine learning can do, and which is probably a stage where the capability of analysis and machine learning and AI and all those things are probably exaggerated, to a situation where we do have a more realistic view about what they can, where they can genuinely add benefit and make a difference. Yeah, I suspect we need to go up and then down a little bit in terms of people's expectations of the profession to reach a realistic place of where we can really make a difference. But unless there are people trumpeting the profession, we'll never get beyond that hump. It'll always stay a sort of marginalised back office function. Really.
That's great. It's a nice place to end as a marginalised back office function. So so Stephen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your thoughts. That's been excellent. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Cheers.